So, Raphael, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode, where I really wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this holiday season. But first, before we begin, I really want to get a clear understanding of where ClearSale sits in the payments ecosystem and landscape. So, perhaps you could kind of explain a little bit about your organization first, and then we'll get into this holiday season.
Of course. So thanks for having me, Ryan. And I want to start by saying that ClearSale helps merchants to prevent fraud from happening. And while doing this, we try to make the customer experience the smoothest possible, without declining orders improperly, and stuff of that nature. So for that reason, we kind of have the full picture of all the orders a merchant have during any period of time. And for that reason, we kind of have a full picture of what's going on in e-commerce, especially among our customers. And obviously connected to the industry in general, we also talk to people and try to understand what's going on in this crazy world, as you say. And that's it. I mean, we try to prevent fraud from happening. And because of this, we kind of have a full picture of what's going on.
Excellent. Yeah. So now let's get into the holiday season here, right? I mean, obviously, this is going to be certainly a very interesting holiday season where you still have the pandemic, and you're going to see, I would have to assume, a lot of sales. They already have essentially shifted from physical store to e-commerce, but usually you kind of have Black Friday sales, which are traditionally in-store sales. But I'd really kind of like to get your perspective on how you could potentially see this holiday season rolling out for merchants. Do you think maybe possibly they kind of try to downplay in-store sales and maybe move them to online? Or what exactly is it that you think is going to kind of unfold during this holiday season?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, ClearSale has been in the market for 20 years, and myself, I spent 12 years with ClearSale and in the e-commerce industry. So I've seen a lot of those holiday seasons, but obviously there is a lot of uniqueness to this one due to the pandemic and everything that unfolded after this. And I would say that my first thought about it is that um, the COVID brought a very interesting element that was people that never bought online starting to buy online simply because they didn't have any other options. We know that with things getting back to normal, as if that's the case at that moment, some of these people will get back to the regular, let's say, offline channels, but some of them won't. So some of them got used to the convenience, the prices, and everything related to e-commerce. So the first thing I want to say is that the volume increase that we saw in the last couple of months, I believe that will replicate during the holiday season. So we may have another record and being in terms of retails in general, selling as more than ever. The second thing is these new people, these new e-shoppers that never bought before, they bring a bunch of new challenges to retailers, right? We are talking about people that are not 100% used to all the elements of e-commerce. So they may not be, may not have their data points, personal information out there, so that you cannot, for instance, in the fraud prevention perspective, you may not have the ability to approve or decline this as fast as you would if you didn't have these new players on the game. So I think this uniquenesses of this year will make it a little tricky, right? So people will have to prepare more than ever and be prepared even to the unexpected, right? So things may happen, and I'll give you an example. I'd say that these new buyers are not as used to the shipping costs and shipping timelines as someone who has been buying e-commerce for the last 10 years. So I think we're dealing with a new consumer, and that's very important to understand when it comes to the holiday season.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up kind of the shipping costs, right? Because I think initially when when e-commerce kind of really started to become a major staple, that people could look at it and kind of go like, yeah, like e-commerce is certainly going to be around in staying around, and more people keep using e-commerce for that. And I think shipping costs was certainly a big factor and still plays a big factor in that. I know through Mercator Advisor Group research, that is one of the main reasons or one of the main things that people look at when they're shopping, online for that, which is I think why you particularly see Amazon and other large retail outlets say, hey, here's either a membership or something like that to kind of cover that. So what you see in terms of a price tag is what you're going to ultimately end up paying, because people do. I think there's a great kind of couple of good jokes online in terms of a product being $7.99 plus $5 in shipping, and people are like, no, but they're like, oh, $12.99 and free shipping, excellent. And you're like, well, that's the same price. Like this, there's no difference. But psychologically, it does have that element at play there, which I certainly think is very interesting. And to the point in terms of shipping costs, I think one of the other interesting factors that I'd love to get your take on is that recently in the news we had it basically said that FedEx and UPS are going to be increasing their rates in terms of surge delivery on that. So it traditionally, I believe in 2018, it was around $1, and they're looking to have that go up to about $4 in terms of just the surge delivery. So something similar to like kind of how Uber has surge pricing during busy times or peak times or anything like that for it. So I'm kind of curious to get, now that there's already sensitivity in terms of shipping costs for consumers and how it is that they buy, how do you kind of see that additional part of it really playing out, considering you have, as you mentioned, a lot of new people potentially coming in saying, well, this is the only way I can really do it right now? And do you think there's going to be kind of that little bit of a shock to them of like, whoa, like why is it that expensive to ship this item? But I'm curious to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, that's another uniqueness of this times, right? We're still to see if this is gonna actually come to reality, right? Like this extra shipping cost. But I want to take two approaches to your question. The first one is that especially in holiday season, that might be something to be aware of. Why? Because the way we see things at ClearSale, we know that the shipping cost affects the purchasing decision, the purchasing journey. The lower the AOV is, the average order value is, the higher is the impact, right? So it's $4 compared to $1,000, or $4 comparing to, in your example, $8, right? Obviously, this additional $4 may impact much more the decisions of the low ticket purchases. And it's true that during holidays, the average order value decreases a little bit because of gifts and stuff that you're buying to other people, right? So that's one point to pay attention to, because I mean, we are talking about a moment in which the tickets the size of the tickets decrease a little bit, and when you add to that an increase in shipping costs, that might cause extra trouble, as you said. The second approach I want to give to this is the fact that, again, we have a new bunch of buyers, e-shoppers, people that never bought online before, or that are getting used to buy online. And in fact, one of the big differences, and probably one of the reasons why these people weren't buying online before, was the shipping costs, right? So I better, as you said, the psychological effect of paying for something that you might believe that is super cheap for you to just go there and get it, right? Even though eventually it's going to cost, parking and stuff like that may cost you the same amount, but psychologically speaking, that's not the case. Not everybody think this way. So I would say that this additional cost, or even any shipping costs, may affect more these people, these new buyers, than it affects the heavy users of e-commerce. And in that matter, I would say that a pickup in store thing, that is something that is historically occupying a small percentage of the transactions only. I would guess that this holiday will be the season where we see a spike on it. So a big increase on the percentage of orders where consumers will talk about, will choose to pick up in store, especially because of the timeline as well. That not only the prices may increase, the shipping costs may increase, but I kind of expect the timelines to increase as well. And we've seen that it may affect the consumer's decision at first, and therefore the merchants have to be prepared to it. So in our experience, just as a quick note, in our experience, it's better for you as a merchant to promise and deliver what you know, eventually under promise and over deliver, uh, in terms of time to deliver your to ship your goods. So you better say you're taking 5 days and deliver it in 4 than saying in 3 and delivering in the same 4. You know what I mean? Because that's what pisses the consumers more, not you know, complying with what was promised. So that was eventually these 3 takeaways that I see on this potentially new additional and extra cost.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I certainly think, especially when it comes to kind of the surge pricing, like you may see some of the large retail outlets potentially either absorb some of that cost on their end, so there isn't so much of a shock to their end consumer. And I think that you've got stores, particularly Amazon, who kind of has their own logistics side of things, that they have their own trucks, they've got their own carriers, they're able
Yep.
to do that last mile delivery there. So for them, I don't think that the surge pricing is going to have such an impact. But I do think for a lot of smaller businesses that this could play a huge deal. So let's maybe kind of talk about maybe some of the things that these smaller businesses could do now, or inform their consumers that they could do now, so that way then they can kind of get around this additional delivery fee that's being imposed during that surge time.
Well, I feel like, as you said, the small and medium businesses are the ones who will be more affected, especially because even their pricing definitions, in terms of how you adjust it on your e-commerce platform or whatever shopping cart you have, it's a little more complex or a little more labor intense. So you don't have the resources as a small business to adjust that. Because in the end of the day, if the major carriers will increase the cost will increase for everybody except the ones that, as you said, they have their own logistics elements. The thing is, what you will do with it, right? So how you're going to handle it. Either I believe that some of them will just increase their tag prices so that they can have the ability to hide the shipping costs behind, let's say, behind the total price. So this is one thing. And the other thing is, there are companies, especially small and medium companies, that will not have even the ability to absorb it in the prices of the goods sold, right? So they will have to add it as an extra cost on the shipping cost. And again, it may affect a lot most of consumers, including and especially the new e-shoppers. And for those, my advice would be just being as upfront about it as possible. Trying to, I mean, this new extra costs are in the media, so you can try. I believe that you can try kind of leverage that as a third party's problem, and trying to say that if it's not here, you're going to be facing this extra cost anywhere else you go, because people will handle this. Nobody will probably eat the loss, the financial loss. Nobody's in a position of eating those losses nowadays on the retail side. So if I were a merchant, that's how I would handle it. I will try to be transparent. I will try to bring the context to the consumer, obviously, without affecting the buying journey. That could be something very easy to communicate and very simple, but at the same time, trying to blame or to share the blame with other people. So let's say here's the extra $4. I'll have 2 of them. Please help me with the extra 2 or something that kind of connects. Because I feel like the people that are buying on Amazon and the big marketplaces have been so dominant on the market that the reason why people buy in other websites usually is already some sort of connection with the local business or the smaller business. So I would say that this, especially niche markets, right? So we're talking about a lot of websites selling very specific products so that you can have this, diversity of selection over there. And that's already a connection more personal than it is when you go to Amazon and you can buy whatever else. So I would try to leverage a little bit this association, this connection, this personal bond that you as a merchant, a small and medium business, you are already doing this with your consumers nowadays.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I want to get into the fraud side of things in just a second, but I know that we are kind of really focusing right now in terms of just what merchants can do about this additional cost that essentially can kind of be coming into play. But let's potentially kind of go into some of the other ways that merchants can kind of start to prepare for the holidays, given that there's going to be so many new variables that are added into it this year that kind of make it such a drastic different from years past. So maybe kind of let's highlight a couple of those that you're seeing from your end, or ideas on your end that you could suggest to merchants that will help better prepare them for this holiday season.
Sure. So I think the first thing I want to say is being prepared for a completely different moment of the year, right? So you cannot compare metrics. All the metrics, marketing, payments, fraud, all those metrics are affected by one of those peaks in sales, right? So you cannot compare your metrics in October and expect the same for late November or December, because they will not be, right? And that said, uh, understanding the holidays as a special period of the year, I think, is the first and biggest advice. Um, in what sense in what sense is this different from the rest of the year? The first one is volume. So you should expect an increasing volume depending on your on the segment you're selling to, and this increase is not only an increase in total volume, but also an increase in the new different consumers starting to buy, right? So COVID brought a bunch of new people, and the holiday season will bring another group of people that never bought online. So you got to make this experience as seamless as possible, as comfortable as possible, because you want these people to come back, and these people are potentially coming back. So as I said, a lot of people that came, let's say, to e-commerce from offline sales. And there are numbers that prove that there was a big migration to e-commerce during the pandemic. They will stay. They will keep buying online. So dealing well with first-time buyers is, let's say, my biggest advice when it comes to preparing to the holiday seasons. And how do you do that? I'd say that the first thing is making sure they will get where they want. And what they want is to buy, and what they want is to buy. The good thing about first-time buyers is they buy with a little more time in advance. They spend a lot of time in your website because they are doing research. They are concerned. They are asking people around about you because they are insecure, right? So they want to make sure this website is legit, if it's going to deliver. So the worst thing you can do is not deliver or not give what you promised. So even if you need to put an extra 1 or 2 days on your shipping time, I would do it, because what you want is these people to trust you. And building trust with first-time buyers is what I'd say is the key to have a successful holiday season in general.
Yeah, I certainly agree with the aspect. I mean, I think it's interesting just in terms of, I mean, we're kind of focusing on the holidays here, but I think what you're really saying resonates throughout the entirety of the year. I mean, it really is like deliver what it is that you promised the end consumer, because
Yeah.
I can certainly say there's a number of times where you sit there and you're just like, oh, this is what I'm expecting, and you don't get it, and it certainly does leave a sour taste in your mouth as a consumer, and you're kind of like, in a world full of endless options of where it is that I have to buy, that one small bad experience, although it might not necessarily be in your control 100%, certainly makes a difference because it's your brand that's the one that's out front. You're
For
the one
sure.
that's leading it there. So I
And think
certainly think
and think about it. We're talking about holiday seasons, so we're talking about a lot of gifts. So the time frame is especially critical during this time of the year. So what if I deliver my kids their gift on the 26th? You know, that makes no sense. So that's you know, Santa does not use UPS, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Only if that were true. Um, so now let's take a look at the fraud aspect because obviously that's going to play a huge role in this holiday season. I mean, it plays a huge role 365, but potentially during the holiday season or especially during the holiday season, just given the volume increase and obviously fraudsters look at that and say, well, yeah, we want a piece of that pie as well too. We want to get in there, and there's multiple ways that they can certainly attack at it from it. So let's kind of dive into that in terms of what are your predictions. Do you kind of see that, hey, you see fraud kind of fitting within those normal or acceptable fraud limits? Do you see kind of an increase in that? Like what do you think that we'll see for the holidays in terms of fraud?
Okay, so just to make sure our audience understands very clearly what kind of fraud we're talking about, because there are multiple types of
Right.
ways fraudsters can affect your merchant, right? We're talking about credit card fraud. So someone utilizing someone else's credit card, and what that does is you as a merchant will have to pay back the issuer the money that was related to that particular purchase. We call it a chargeback, right? Something that you thought it was a sale, but actually was a trap from a fraudster. That said, I would say that one good thing about holiday seasons is that it attracts the spike, the increase in good sales is higher than the increase in fraud. So there is an increase in fraud. Fraudsters are aware that people are busy during this period of the year. Merchants are busy during this period of the year. They may lose a little bit their filters and their fraud prevention strategy. So they do try to take advantage of it. But on the other hand, the good consumers also buy, let's say, if we're talking about an increase sometimes around 50%, 40 to 50%, if you take November and December versus what you had in, let's say, September and October, um, the increase in fraud is, let's say, 10, 15, or 20%, right? So what is the effect of this? Relatively, the percentage of fraud attempts is lower during holiday season than it is in a regular basis. Which doesn't mean you should, back off your guards. It's a period of the year where the highest financial loss can be happening because one, well, as I said, the fraud attempts increases even though it doesn't increase as much as the good sales attempts. Number two, we're talking about a busy moment where eventually, I mean, a lot of merchants have many review processes to try to avoid frauds from happening. And if you have an increase, you have sometimes, if you're talking about Cyber Monday, for instance, in one day you may have the volume of 5 to 10 days. You know what I mean? So obviously, any process that involves manual review or human beings in any level will be busy and may not happen as fast as you wanted. And when you're super busy, you may make worse decisions. So it's not just because the relative number of fraud attempts is lower, it doesn't mean that the end number will be lower, because you may let a lot of more fraud go through because of how busy you are. So sometimes the chargeback rates are even higher during this period of time, and you have to be very conscious about it. So at ClearSale in particular, we prepare kind of the whole year for this moment, because it's especially challenging. But there's a lot of opportunity as well, because again, you're bringing new consumers, you're bringing people that never bought online, you're having the chance to um, loyal to have a loyal customer as after a very good customer experience, especially gifts. We know that people that buy gifts online, they tend to go back to the same website more often than people that are buying something for themselves. I believe that has to do with the pleasure, the psychological positive effect of giving a gift to someone. um, so I would say that the fraud perspective, as I said, is at the same time a very important risk. We are talking about the months of the year where you're selling the most. So it's probably the months of the year that, in terms of total dollar amount, is the highest potential loss you have. So you gotta, prepare very, very cautiously to this period of the year.
Yeah. Now, one last question before we wrap up, because obviously, we talked about when it comes to chargebacks and just the manual review process is obviously very painstaking. It's not something that people enjoy
Yep.
doing from any aspect. But now, when we kind of take a look at the automated side of things, obviously we're taking a look at AI and machine learning algorithms to figure all that out. Now, through this conversation, we certainly talked about that there's a lot of new consumers that are coming in that obviously feed data into that to try to be able to say, okay, yes, this is not a chargeback, this is, and
All
trying to
legit.
remove, yeah, false positives. So, but the question though that now that I have is, given that machine learning is really based upon users' behavior, and that we've got a lot of new people coming into the system, and behaviors have kind of changed quickly to some extent,
Yep.
in terms of just seeing a normal progression. How are you seeing like machine learning algorithms really adapt to those quick pace changes that really don't happen very often in the industry, in terms of just large volumes of consumer behavior trend changing seemingly overnight? Now, obviously, it's a little bit longer than that, but what are you seeing in terms of those algorithms? Are they responding very well, or are we kind of seeing like a little bit of an increase, but that will start to mellow out as more and more people, these new people, become regular consumers on e-commerce?
Well, you brought a lot of amazing elements to my answer here, because you hit the nail on the head when you said that the changes, if they're not followed by smart decisions when it comes to how you use the machine learning algorithms, they will lead you to a worse set of KPIs, right? So worse customer experience. And you gave the perfect example when you said that when you have a new consumer, and or a percentage of new consumers out of their regular, algorithms in general, they are looking for abnormal behaviors, right? So they are trying to separate, to tell apart good consumers from fraudsters, and usually abnormal elements are the ones that that raise red flags, right? So yes, I see a lot of merchants and a lot of systems, and not only on the fraud prevention sector, but in many others. But speaking of the fraud prevention sector, a lot of people with much worse results after this change that the market is going through. And what I mean by worse results is a lot of more people being declined improperly, as you called the false positives. So the system is raising a flag and is actually a good consumer. Is just, and I'll give you a few examples of how this new trend, this new behavior is different from what we were seeing. So during COVID and the quarantine, a lot of people that never bought online is buying, as I said. Second, a lot of people change address. So they were sending things to office, and a lot of us don't even have an office anymore. People are spending the quarantine in families' houses, so the address is again different, or even renting houses in another city or whatever. This is important. So all these changes in behavior, and people are buying more frequently. So there's something in fraud prevention we call velocity, where people are buying more. There are many purchases with the same data point. Before quarantine, that was a red flag. I'm not sure if it is anymore, because if I'm the only way I'm buying is online, if I use it to buy once a month and now I'm buying twice a week, is it a red flag, or is it just because I can't just go to the brick and mortar store, right? So that's a question mark we can't always respond upfront. So those are the challenges, right? So, and that resonates to the holiday seasons as well. So how should we respond to that? First of all, I would say that holiday season wise, your preparations, your benchmarks should be from another holiday season and not from a regular period of the year. So if you have fraud prevention wise a rules-based system, your rules should be set according to what happened in the last holiday and not necessarily with what happened comparing to what happened in October. However, now we have a totally new situation. So we have to blend what happened in May to October with what happened in the last holiday. So ClearSale's answers to that, and I believe that's a good way to handle it, is first of all, um, the more you can make automated decisions, the better. But uh, machines learn from what we teach them. So there's not such a thing of machines learning by themselves. So we got to feed them with correct information. So what ClearSale does, and we believe, is that um, you got to approve automatically the more transactions we can. And in terms of ClearSale, that represents more than 95% of the orders are approved right away, just based on the rules and the algorithms. But the orders that are flagged as risky, they should be given the benefit of the doubt. And what I mean by that is if you decline those orders, you will never know if they were fraudsters or not. And then your algorithms will be feedback with a unclear answer. While if you do some sort of manual review, if you put a specialist human being to make a decision whether or not to approve those orders, then you may have a better feedback to your system and you may get a better machine learning. So a lot of people think that manual review process may sound like old school and something like opposite to the machine learning. I feel like the opposite. I feel like the better your manual review is, the better your algorithms will be. So think about Facebook, for instance. They have close to 30,000 employees or subcontractors, not employees, just to flag posts as offensive or not offensive. Does anybody challenge Facebook for being not a technological company? Obviously, they are a super techy company, but they still need people that understand culture, understand the different languages that the content is being posted, the videos. So I wouldn't be on their shoes. I mean, you looking at pedophile and hate speech all day, but that's part of a big engine. So in fraud prevention is no different. So you do need a small piece of human beings doing their job into flagging some orders and allowing some others to go. First of all, to approve as much as you can, right? So if you decline some orders right away, you don't give them benefit of the doubt. You don't give them the chance to be approved and to please your new consumer. And second, sorry. And secondly, you feedback your algorithms, and that makes your algorithms and your future decisions, automated decisions, much better.
Yeah, I completely agree there in terms of just it's not, you can't just set up a machine and just say, hey, have at it and let it run. You still need to have that human tech approach when it comes to especially machine learning. We're not at the point yet where you kind of have the machine essentially being able to learn on its own. And what really kind of mean by that is that it isn't, you have to inform it and kind of basically be able to feed it in the data. And to your point, you don't want to have kind of a garbage in, garbage out kind of mentality where, yes, you could just basically say like, well, I'm just going to have this database of transactions here directly feed into the machine and basically let it go off of those rules. No, you really still need to consistently be fine tuning that situation, because eventually you're going to get down to a smaller and smaller percentage that are flagged and saying, okay, these don't really meet these rules. These are really, really far niche edge cases. And those are the instances where you do want a human to kind of go in and go like, okay, here are the nuances of the situation that will either allow it to go through or not. So even from then, your chargeback ratio goes down significantly. So even if you do happen to let that go and you just say, hey, yes, even on a manual review, we did this, then next time when you get that chargeback, okay, this was actually bad, go back in, re-update the system, so then next time it won't get caught, or it will get, it'll get flagged and be like, oh, yep, fit those criteria there for it. So Raphael, thank you so much for taking the time today for speaking to me about this holiday season and what merchants can expect. And I hope to have you back on the show real soon.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for you, Ryan, and for your audience today.